and now, who is ready for the 5-step business cleanse? I don't know about you all, but I'd like to know how to get the crap out of my business and get things moving again. Is this going to involve like weird fiber shakes and green juices? Kristin Luck? If so, I'm all in. Kristin is the founding managing partner of ScaleHouse Consulting. Kristin is a serial entrepreneur and growth strategist, and I'm told she will walk us through 5 easy steps to ensure your business or brand is built to scale and position for success. Welcome to the stage, Kristin Luck.
It's really nice to be here in Bend and actually presenting in my hometown for once. I tend to travel quite a bit, and so I thought I would, as a native Oregonian, tell you just a short story to kick things off about why I love being an Oregonian so much. So as part of ScaleHouse, so my partners and I, Michael Pisani's back there somewhere, we have Michael, we put out a monthly newsletter that's focused on, our best tips and tricks for growth. And I come from a quantitative data analysis background originally, and so because of that, of course, I'm super metrics focused. Every time we put out a blog, I'm looking at all the metrics. I want to know which articles perform the best. We're posting them on LinkedIn. I'm looking at the click-through rates and trying to figure out what will make more people read our content. And so month after month after month after month, we've been doing this. And I was coming off of a long the travel leg, and my suitcase that I had had for years finally broke. And I love this suitcase almost more than life itself because it's with me nearly every day. And it's a really funny bag. It's a Japanese luggage maker. It's super cheap. It's called Hadiya Wakamatsu, and I am like a brand evangelist for this suitcase. And so once it finally died, which took about 6 years, I mean, this bag survived everything. It's made out of tarpaulin. It has survived getting thrown out of a plane in Fiji before the plane landed. It got dumped out of a boat in Vietnam, and everything was dry when I opened it again. It is an amazing bag, and it has flown all over the world with me. And so what did I do when it finally died? I bought another identical Hadiya Wakamatsu bag. And I was so excited about this new bag, and because I love the brand so much, I posted it on LinkedIn and just sort of raved a bit about how much I loved this bag. And this fucking post got more likes than anything that I have ever posted on LinkedIn. It got more comments, more people liked it, more engagement, and so I was like, wow, my post is going viral. I'm feeling kind of special. And my new bag and I took off on a long adventure. We went to New York, and a guy actually stopped me at the airport in New York and was like, hey, you're the woman from LinkedIn with the bag. Can I take a picture? And I was like, of course. I'm sidling up to the bag and posing with my new Hadiya Wakamatsu bag. Then I was in Amsterdam coming down the street, and a guy said, you look so familiar. Is that a bag? Did I see that bag on LinkedIn? Literally on the street in Amsterdam. And I was like, why, yes, he wanted to take a picture of it. So of course I pose again with my bag. Then I fly into the Bend airport, and a guy at the, I was waiting to go through the little revolving door, those really annoying revolving doors when you're trying to get off the plane home, and you're waiting there, and I don't know why they put revolving doors in there. Just all you need to do is push and go through. But I was coming through there, and a guy said to me, hey, didn't I see you on LinkedIn with this post about this bag? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, oh, can I take a picture? And I was like, of course. And of course I moved because no, get out, get out of the frame. And that's when you're really not a big deal in your own hometown. Yeah, that was a sad moment for me. But that is why I love being an Oregonian. January generally is my least favorite time to be in Bend because I, like most people in this town, I'm sort of a year-round fitness buff. And so I like to take my yoga classes at Groove, and I like to go to Mother's and get a juice in the morning. And January is literally the worst time to do all those things because all the yoga classes are sold out. Everyone's trying to get back into shape again after the holidays. There's like a 20-person line at Mother's. I can't get my juice. And so here at ScaleHouse, our motto for January is to screw the juice cleanse and focus on the business cleanse. So that is what I'm going to be walking you through this evening, is a 5-step business cleanse, basically how to get the crap out of your business and get things moving. Yes, folks, this is an entire fecally themed presentation this evening, so pay close attention. And it was really inspired by a client of mine that I'd had for a couple months, and she finally said, it would be really helpful if you could just tell me the 5 things that I should focus on every day that I keep screwing up, and just make me some Cliff's Notes that I can hang up by my desk. And so I was like, yeah, I can totally do that. And what I have found over the last 5 years of doing growth strategy consulting is that nearly every firm suffers from these same 5 things. So they're great things to pay attention to. Of course, there's more than 10 things that are 5 things that are going to make your business grow. But these 5 I find are problematic, or people fail to pay attention to them over and over again. So the first one is your competitive moat can't be filled with bullshit. So if you're not familiar with the term competitive moat, it's something that Warren Buffett coined years ago, and it's all about creating defensibility for your business. So what makes your business special and different? And one of the things that I find is that almost nobody really understands who their true competitive set is. Sometimes we think about our competitive set aspirationally, or there's new competitors that come into play. So we did a competitive analysis years ago, but we're not really paying attention to what else is going on in the space. So one of the things that I try to advise my clients to do is, at least on an annual basis, really take a hard look at who your competitive set really is and be very realistic about it. I think that's another thing that folks fail to do, is that they almost get too aspirational. I was doing a consulting gig for a company a couple weeks ago, and they're roughly a $30 million consultancy. And in their competitive set, they wanted to put McKinsey and Boston Consulting Group, which are $1.25 billion companies, which is great. It's aspirational, but you don't compete against them today. So being really realistic about who you compete against, I think is super important. And then the second, obviously, is to conduct an actual competitive analysis. And this is where I feel like people fall short a lot of the time. A lot of the time when we look at competitive analysis, we look at product or pricing, and we don't look fundamentally at how companies are positioning themselves against us. So what I always look at is how they're talking about themselves in the marketplace. What's their market messaging? How are they positioned? How are they selling to clients? And most of this stuff is actually pretty easy to find online. You can do it yourself. You don't need to hire someone to do it for you. How's their website function? What's their demo process look like? Or how are they selling to consumers? Or what's the path to purchase that they have on their website? All of these things you can gather on your own, but I feel like a lot of times we don't take the time to do that. And then lastly is identifying what your key differentiators are. And this can be a really challenging, I think, and painful exercise for a lot of people. I think that we all tend to think of our businesses as very unique, special snowflakes that no one can possibly describe because they're so amazing and we're so different. That's never the case, by the way. Everybody has something that makes them special and different, of course, but you really have to do the work to define it. So, for instance, when I ask people what their key differentiators are, a lot of the times I hear things like, we've got really smart PhDs on staff. No offense, I love PhDs. We give great, we have great customer service, or clients love us. Those are not key differentiators. Anybody can own those claims. And so what I really encourage people to do is to dig deep and think about what are things that you can claim that your competitive set can't. And there's a really easy way of figuring this out if something is truly differentiated, because if you can take a statement and put your competitor's name in front of it easily, then it's not a key differentiator. And there's tons of great exercises online that you can use to figure out what your key differentiators are. There's one called Nail a Niche that I've seen used a lot of times. We have one at ScaleHouse that we use, which I'm happy to email you if you want it. But figuring out those key differentiators, I think, are really, really important. All right, step 2 in the business cleanse is realizing that a leaky sales or marketing process poisons performance. So if you've ever had food poisoning, anybody here ever had food poisoning? Yeah. Okay. Well, a leaky marketing funnel kind of functions in the same way. Things go in one end and out the other very quickly. That's a leaky marketing funnel. The first step in fixing that is mapping out all of your funnel metrics, which most people don't do. So we spend a lot of money on marketing, or we're doing a lot of marketing activities, but we don't understand how people are moving through the marketing funnel or converting from stage to stage to stage to stage. So understanding your funnel metrics and how marketing actually functions and making sure you don't have a leaky lead funnel, and I'm gonna talk more about that in just a minute, why that's such a problem, is super, super important. And this is regardless of whether you're a B2B company or you're a direct-to-consumer company or you're a CPG company. Doesn't matter. The second is making sure that you've got CRM compliance in-house. And I would say that I'm probably the least CRM compliant person on earth. There's nothing I hate more than having to enter things into a CRM system. But CRM compliance is super, super important to understand what activities you're engaging in that are actually driving sales. And if you don't understand that, then you have no way of optimizing your marketing and sales strategy. One of the strategies that I've used to encourage CRM compliance is I've always had like a weekly sales and marketing meeting. And nothing gets talked about in the meeting that's not in the CRM system. And if you're in a sales position like I have been through most of my career, you know there's nothing that salespeople love more than bragging about activities that they've done that week. So if those activities are not in your CRM, then they don't get talked about. So CRM compliance is really key. And again, you can't gauge marketing performance unless you have an understanding of what your funnel metrics are and where you are in your CRM system. And then my third tip around marketing funnel is to make sure that you're using AI and automation for good and not for evil. AI and automation is fantastic. It's been, a huge helper for sales and marketing activities, but it's also like hugely disruptive, and I think has distanced us from a lot of the sales activities that we try to do. I'm sure everyone in this room has been on LinkedIn and you've had someone connect with you, and then literally 30 seconds later, you get an offer for some amazing business deal that is not at all relevant to your business. I can't even tell you how many times I've had someone connect with me and then said, oh, can you connect me with the person that runs your HR? Well, you can spend 30 seconds going to my website and see there's 3 partners in the firm. Probably don't have an HR problem. I got an amazing offer a couple weeks ago to go back to school and get my MBA at 47, having now sold 3 companies. I think that there's a time and a place for AI and automation, and I think we have to be really smart how we use it, and that you're not creating a sales process or a sales cycle that is turning people off from your product or service. And I see this mistake again and again and again and again. All right, step 3 in the 5-step business cleanse is ensure your hard-won leads aren't ending up in the toilet. And this is a big one. It kind of flows through the marketing funnel and then into sales. And a lot of times what we see is a broken sales process where you've got consumers coming in to buy. If you're in a direct-to-consumer business and people are buying off your site, your sales process isn't optimized. Or in a B2B business where leads are coming in and they're not being properly worked for a variety of reasons. There are lots of opportunities now to automate lead nurturing, again, if it's done the right way. I've used a technology called Drift before, which I think if you program it the right way can be super, super helpful, but also super creepy if it's not done correctly. So automating lead nurturing is super important. And then also really making sure that you're working conferences and expos correctly. I mean, how many people in this room go to conferences? Besides this event, obviously, yes. They're incredibly, incredibly expensive, particularly if you're exhibiting and you've got product there, you've got maybe 3 or 4 salespeople there, you're meeting with distributors, or you're meeting with clients, or you're trying to do software demos. I find that probably 99% of the people that I talk to go into those events with no plan at all. And that means no pre-marketing, no plan once they get on site, no quota for how many leads or contacts they're trying to make, no plan after they come back from the event as to how they're going to convert those leads and turn them into sales, which is really problematic. And particularly if you're doing events that are back to back to back to back. I was on vacation this last week in Miami with a friend of mine who owns her own business, and she was telling me a story about how she had gone to this conference last year, and she had landed a meeting with Airbnb, which would be a huge account for her. And so she was really excited. She was like, oh yeah, I met this woman from Airbnb, and she goes, and then I was like completely humiliated last week, and I was like, why, what happened? And she's like, well, I went to another conference, and the woman was there. And I went up to her and I was like, hey, remember me? I'm Martha, blah, blah, blah. We met last year at this event. And she's like, I do remember you because you're the only person that didn't follow up with me afterward. And she said, I actually hadn't followed up with her. I got too busy. I came back, then I went to another event. And this is the CEO of the company. I went to another event and I just forgot about it. I didn't have the time and I didn't follow up. And I think that plays into another point, which is people give up way too early on lead follow-up. The most successful salespeople that I know follow up again and again and again and again. I think the average time now to convert, an average, and I'm gonna say it from a B2B perspective because that's where most of my work is, but the average number of touches that a lead has to get in order to convert in a B2B environment is 20. Most people give up after 3 or 4. So if you have given up after 3 or 4 leads, you're never gonna ever convert. So keeping that in mind, like that persistence is key and that it's relationship development. I'm gonna talk a little bit more about this and about customer experience and how important that relationship development is. But if you're in a business where you're, and we all are, where you're actively selling to customers, like don't give up so easily. And to make sure that you're really maximizing your conference investment and spend. It's incredibly, incredibly expensive to go to events, and they actually convert at the lowest rate of any kind of marketing activity. Only about 1%. 1%. Except at PubTalk, where it's 100%. Thanks. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about client engagement and why that's so important. But for sure, like really thinking about your marketing spend and where you're putting your dollars, and making sure that you're calculating your ROI on those events. I find that a lot of people don't calculate ROI on event by event spend, and so anecdotally, I can tell you right now, every salesperson will come home from a conference and say, that was amazing. Oh my God, I met so many people there. We should definitely spend $100,000 doing that event next year. No. Mm-mm. You want to look and see if you're actually converting from those conferences and if it's worth the spend. If you're getting positive ROI from an event, then it's worth going to again. And if it's not, go investigate another event. I think event spend is an important part of a marketing mix, but it shouldn't be the only part of your marketing mix. So ensure your hard-won leads are not ending up in the toilet. Step 4, very important step. Don't crap on your existing clients. And I see this a lot because we get so focused on bringing new business in that we forget about the clients that we already have. And it is so, so hard to bring new clients in. It's so much easier to grow and build clients that you already have in place. And I have to say that many of the companies that we work with at ScaleHouse already have all the clients that we'll ever need, but they just don't create relationships. And that's super, super important. One of the things that I always advise people to do is to figure out in your organization who are hunters and who are farmers, because those are 2 very different types of people generally. You know, most salespeople can hunt and farm, but they're really good at hunting. If you're really good at hunting, you just want those people hunting. You want them out looking for new business. People that are good farmers are people that are good at relationship building, that like working with clients every day. They could be project or account managers or key account managers. Those are the people that should be tasked with building the accounts, and they should have a revenue target as well. But oftentimes we just look at that as, oh, hey, we've got a client in, and now we're doing business with them, and we just hope that account is going to grow organically. Don't leave it to chance and fate. One of the things that I've developed, and to James's point, not to make this too pervy, but I have what I call the customer love strategy. And the point behind it is it's basically a guide for how you keep in touch and connected with your clients on a week-to-week basis, which for some reason is not innate to a lot of people. What I have found is that if you have to send a client an email, and we've all done it in this room, that says, hey, just checking in, yeah, you've already blown it. Like, you should never, ever have to send a client an email that says, hey, just checking in. Because you should be checking in with them all the time, sending them interesting articles. You should know when their wedding anniversary is, or if they're gonna have a baby, or if they moved jobs, and you shouldn't find that out from LinkedIn, by the way. So having a real deep understanding of who your buyer is, and not just as a buyer, but as a person, I think is really, really important to relationship development. And that kind of takes me to my third point around customer experience, which is to really employ what I would call a land and expand strategy. And there's lots of ways of doing this. If you're in a marketing role, you'll probably recognize this as account-based marketing techniques. There's some really cool AI platforms now. I know HubSpot's coming out with a new version of account-based management. You can use platforms like Triblio to do AI-based IP address targeting if you want to get in deeper at organizations where you already have relationships. But if you think at some, like a big account that you might have, maybe you're in touch with 1 or 2 or 3 people at that account, but not the other 50 people that might be buying. And I'll use a good example of that would be if anybody does business with Procter & Gamble or ever has. You get in with one person, whoever runs a particular brand within P&G, but then to get business from other brands, you have to go to every single brand manager. That's a really arduous process. But if you can get referred around, if you can host meetings on site, if you can do lunch and learns or a breakfast briefing or some kind of activity or ask for referrals, that goes a long way. And again, what I found is for most companies, unless you're in an early stage, chances are you could be growing at a much, much faster rate than if you were just focusing on bringing in new business. And that's also really relevant to churn. One of the first things I look at when I'm coming into a company for the first time and kind of analyzing why they're not growing or, could they be growing faster is I look at year-over-year growth. And anecdotally, when I talk to CEOs, generally 9 out of 10 say, oh, clients love us. We've got tons of repeat business. And I find that almost never to be the case. Not that clients don't love you, I'm sure they do, but I don't think they love you as much as you think they do. Case in point, I was doing an assessment in November for a company in San Francisco that does fintech. And the CEO was saying yeah, we've got great customer loyalty, our customers love us. And I pulled a year-over-year report out of their financial system that showed all the revenue that they got in 2018 versus all the revenue they got in 2019 from those same clients. And she had a 60% churn rate. The average churn rate, or a good churn rate for a software as a services company, is 10%. For a services-based company, it's about 20%. So 60% is way, way out there. And I wouldn't say that that's unusual either. And so I would say that if you're in a customer-focused business, which I think probably most of us are, look at if you are getting repeat business and where that's coming from. And then the fifth step, or the last step in the 5-step business cleanse, is all about team. So to James's point, how important team is. Has everybody in here seen Bridesmaids? Yeah. I think probably everyone's favorite scene from that movie is when the maid of honor gives everyone food poisoning and then everyone shits their brains out at the bridal salon. That's what a bad team member can do for your team. I was reading an article a couple weeks ago, and it said that the wrong employee can actually cost a business 15 times their salary. 15 times. I think we all have a tendency to hold on to people too long and to give people the benefit of the doubt versus realizing early enough in the game when somebody's not working out anymore, and that person can be extremely toxic to your work environment. Extremely toxic. It's interesting, in my second company, there was a guy that worked with me in marketing, and he was not at all qualified to be working in marketing. He had been a developer that wanted to go into marketing, and so I gave him the benefit of the doubt. And then I got really reliant on him because he was the only resource I had. And then when he finally gave his notice and said he was going to go back into development, I cried. I was really upset. And then 2 months later, I hired a woman who had been the former director of marketing for the San Francisco Opera. And I have to tell you that I've never missed that guy a day since then. In fact, I kind of kicked myself, like, why didn't I fire this guy like 2 years ago and hire somebody that actually knew what they were doing? So, determining who's the right fit for the job is super, super important. And I know particularly here in Bend, where there are oftentimes very tight hiring situations and you sometimes feel like you just have to take what you can get, I would say, A, consider remote employees, which I've done. B, hold out for the superstars or try to poach them from someone else in this room. Great place to find new employees. I'll also say that, many times employees that are the right fit in the early stages of the company are not the right fit in the later stages. And as you grow, you are gonna outgrow some of your employees, and that's just a fact of life. There's plenty of opportunities, I think, to upskill or retrain people or put them in different roles, and I've seen that happen successfully maybe 2 or 3 times, and the rest of the time it's just truthfully not a fit. And it's sometimes it's a skill set issue, and sometimes it's just a cultural issue. I think that growth is hardest on the people that have been in the company the longest. I know in some of my firms, just having proximity to senior management and having that change over time was extremely emotionally taxing on them. And so it's just something to be aware of as you grow, that you want to make sure that you're either upskilling your employees or determining who's the right fit to move forward with the company. And then lastly, under that point, if you're an executive and you're in an early stage company, chances are that you are used to doing a lot of things yourself. And one of the biggest barriers to growth are executives and CEOs who spend too much time working in the business versus on the business. And that's a huge, huge transition for people to make. It was for me in all of my companies. I am a type A perfectionist control freak, and I can guarantee you nobody can do anything better than me, which, as you can tell, is total bullshit. But it feels like death when you're trying to let go of things that you're used to doing. And I can tell you, I see it over and over and over again, where people get so entrenched in the day-to-day business, and also because they're really comfortable there. And to get out of that day-to-day and to work on the business versus in it creates fundamental discomfort for people. Believe me, I would rather do my QuickBooks invoicing all day long than work on, some really detailed corporate strategy that was outside of my comfort zone when I was running businesses. I didn't want to make cold calls and try to get clients in. I would rather sit behind my desk and micromanage projects. So these are all activities that you kind of have to learn to let go of, A, because your business won't grow without it, but also because you will exhaust yourself. In my second startup, I remember I was running the company, building a technology platform, and then coming in on the weekends and cleaning the bathroom because I didn't want to pay someone to do it. And as I was sitting in my hairdresser's chair weeping out of exhaustion, she was like, "Why are you cleaning your own bathroom? Do you make over $25 an hour?" It literally never occurred to me before. Yeah. So be choosy about the activities that you take on, and realize that there are some things that, you may enjoy doing a lot, but that you shouldn't necessarily be doing. Another great example, I had a CEO of a $30 million company that was still booking the travel for her entire company at $30 million. And the woman worked nonstop, like 24/7. And it was a control issue. And there's a saying, let go to grow. It's super, super important that you let go of things. One of my favorite mantras is don't let perfect get in the way of good enough, which is painful for me every time I say it because I do want everything to be perfect, but it's not. So if you're an executive, make sure you're working on the business more than in it. My rule of thumb is 80% on, 20% in. Any kind of on activity is a growth activity. It's something that's going to ultimately grow the business. It's, key count sales. It could be new product development. Anything that is not the nitty-gritty of running the business day to day would be on. And if anybody wants to quiz me on versus in after this talk, I'd be happy to take that quiz. So those are the 5 steps. Differentiate, differentiate, differentiate. It's very important. Understanding your competitive moat and who you're competing against and what makes you special and different is super, super, super important. Make sure you don't have a leaky marketing funnel. There is nothing more tragic than spending a lot of money generating leads and not having them worked or not working them correctly. And that's regardless of what kind of business you're in. So make sure that you do not have a leaky funnel. And hopefully my food poisoning example will stick with you for that. You really want to show your existing clients some love, and not in the pervy way, but just create relationships, and deep relationships are super, super important, and people don't spend enough time on them. Your existing clients are gold, so don't lose them. As somebody that has worked in sales for years and years and years, it is so painful and arduous to bring new clients in, and it's then equally painful when you see them going out the door. So existing client growth is super important. Remember your churn rates. Keep an eye on that. And then obviously, be super selective about your team. And again, I know this can be really challenging, particularly if you're in a startup environment. It can be really, really hard to convince people to join a startup. And sometimes you just take what you can get. But the more selective you can be about who's on your team and getting the right people in the door from the get-go is super important. And so with that, I'm going to leave you with one of my mantras. Alan Mogensen, who's technically the father of simplicity, says, "Work smarter, not harder." And so I hope this evening I've inspired you to work a little smarter. Yeah, thanks for having me.
And we're back. I just have to say, I've known you for many years. I really admire you. I was so looking forward to your talk, and every time I see you, I feel so lucky to know you. And I want to share my favorite moment from Bridesmaids is when she's talking about the lady churning butter out on the wing of the plane, because that's how I feel when it comes to dating. True story. Do you feel that? I'm just like, am I speaking a language no one else is speaking, or they're speaking a language I've never heard of? I don't know. I have no idea. Okay, so
amazing dating story, but
do you want to
share it now? Does everyone want to hear my dating story? Yes? Yes. Okay, so I'm recently single. I was with my partner for 8 years, and he had a little midlife crisis this last year and left. So some of his friends are here. We love him. We love him. We love him. We miss you, Stefanos. Anyway, so I, was off the market for some time, and I went to a women's event in August in London, and a friend of mine there, a very lovely woman who runs her own business, was like, "Kristin, this is getting ridiculous. Like, you need to get back in the game." And I was like, "I live in Bend, Oregon, and there are literally no single men my age here." And she was like, "Nope, you just gotta get out there. You travel all the time. You're not gonna have a problem meeting anybody." And right after that, I was going to Italy for a week, and I was like, "Okay, all right." And she was like, "You got to do the dating apps." And I'm like, absolutely no to dating apps. I don't want to do any dating apps. I don't want to do it. And she was like, no, there's a great one for Southern Europe called Badoo. So she was like, installs it on my phone, builds my profile for me. I land in Italy. I'm in Milan. I turn my phone on when I get there, and then I go to sleep. I woke up the next morning. How many contacts do you think I had? How many? 108. Any other bets on? I'm a blonde in Italy. 1,864 requests. And apparently you can call through the app, and 5 guys had called me in the middle of the night. Yeah, so I uninstalled it.
That's amazing, because when I was writing my joke about the great poo reveal, I was like, it kind of makes me think of what it would be like to speed date at Corey's, just like turds everywhere. Yeah. You know what I mean? Yeah. You know what I mean? Okay, so don't send them our way. I think we covered that, yeah. So I love your presentation, and I'm wondering where you got the initial idea to put it into the spectrum of like the cleanse speak, because it's really like appropriate and easy to digest. I had to, but yeah.
I don't know where I got that idea, honestly. Every time that I give a talk, I try to come up with something thematically that ties everything together. And for some reason, crapping just really, you know what? Because it is about all the things that slow you down in a business. And so I think that was the inspiration behind it, which is like, hey, sometimes you just need to, you need to cleanse your life, spring cleaning. And I did actually try to do a whole spring cleaning theme, but it just didn't pull it together.
Quite the way
like crap did.
I like to say better out than in, which is true for just about everything. Any questions from the audience for Kristin? Yes.
Yeah, so I'm wondering when you're communicating with like CEOs and executives, what's your approach towards communicating to them that their idea basically sucks?
How do you tell a CEO their idea sucks?
I think that it's not about the idea that sucks. Usually it's about the positioning of it, honestly. I mean, I don't run into a whole lot of CEOs. I mean, generally we're working with companies that are, they've already made it past like a seed round. Like I'm not doing a whole lot of super early stage advising, although I am advising one pre-revenue company right now where I actually have told them like, hey, your strategy is kind of way off and you could grow a lot faster if you did X, X, and X. But I would say for the most part, we're working with companies that they're not growing as fast as they want to, or it's a turnaround, so their revenue is actually in decline, and they don't really understand why. So usually people are pretty receptive to the feedback that we're giving. It's pretty rare that I go into an engagement and someone's like, ugh, like, please don't tell me what to do. It's usually people who are looking for some direction, and they also want to get advice from someone who's actually been there before. And I think that's one of the differences that we have in our firm, which is, like, we've all been in C-suite positions or have been serial entrepreneurs with successful exits. So we've been in the trenches before and we understand what we're talking about. And I think, yeah, we speak that language. But like I said, it's rare that I'm going in and shooting down. I have shot down a couple really bad product ideas. Yeah. But I think if you're good at explaining the logic behind it, and also if you have data to back up why maybe it's a bad idea, then people are more receptive to it. Yeah. And to say it nicely with a smile.
Yeah, I mean, you speak to people as if they're human, and I think that really helps. So speak to them like they're human. Any other questions for Kristin tonight? Yes.
So Kristin, I know that you have a global presence. Are you looking to expand in the Pacific Northwest, and what does that look like?
Are you looking to expand in the Pacific Northwest, and what does that look like? Because you have a global presence, certainly in Italy.
Very, very strong presence in Italy, as it turns out. Who knew? That's a really loaded question, Terry, since we just had coffee 2 days ago. Thanks for feeding me an easy one. Yeah, I am trying not to travel 300 days a year. Michael Pisani and Michael, the guy, the investment banker in the blue jacket. Yep. See, I'm not wearing my blue jacket tonight. I met Michael earlier this year. We both sit on the board of Lunchbox Alchemy together, and he's like a financial whiz. And so he joined ScaleHouse late last year, and so we kind of expanded the scope of services we were providing. So we were doing pretty much just growth strategy and pre-M&A prep. And then I got my investment banking license this last year. Michael's a licensed investment banker. We're both affiliated with Oberon, which is a EDCO member. And so we are really looking at expanding our footprint and being able to offer, I think, more support to people in this community. It's a fast-growing business community. I think there's a ton of companies. Like when I first moved here 14 years ago, there were a lot of early-stage companies, but not many mid or later stage companies. So people who were kind of looking for seed but weren't ready for A or B or C rounds, or weren't looking to divest or to sell their company in some way. And I think that's changed a lot. And so yeah, I would love to be able to stay here more and take Shannon's yoga classes. Hadiya Wakamatsu might be a little lonely in the closet, but yes, we are definitely focused on the Pacific Northwest, and we are, the verticals that we work in are marketing services and marketing technology, emerging consumer packaged goods, and cannabis. Yeah.
Awesome. I love those Lunchbox Alchemy friends. Anybody else with a question from the audience? Anybody else have a question? Aaron.
How much did Roger Lee pay you to talk about CRMs and how
How much did Roger Lee pay you to talk about the importance of CRMs?
I did not get paid anything to talk about CRMs because CRMs are really important. And if you are not using one, you should be. Yes. CRMs are very, very important. Yeah.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience tonight for Kristin? Okay, I don't want to miss anybody. Don't want to miss anyone. Do you have any interest in picking up a public speaking yoga teacher as a client? I'm just asking for a friend. She could use some help. Any other questions tonight? Well, Kristin, it's amazing to have you. I appreciate everything that you offered, and even though it was specific to larger companies, I actually got a lot from what you had to share. Anything you want to close up with? Okay, I think you covered it. I hope your suitcase is lonely a little bit, just a little bit, just like used for more fun trips, right? Thanks for being here. And because you are our keynote tonight, I get to present you with this ginormous PubTalk mug. You can bring it back to a future PubTalk and get a free fill. I think it's really worth mentioning that the last time that you and I chatted at PubTalk with our friend in the blue jacket, what we spoke about is I gave you all a little tip that actually the best place to flirt in Bend is Market of Choice after dark. You're welcome, okay? Check it out. There's a whole scene happening there. Thank you so much, Kristin. Awesome, I'll see you there.